Surrounded. And today I'm so excited to be talking to my new friend and Point Park graduate, Kevin Stiller, all the way from Los Angeles, California. So, Kevin, how are you?
Doing good. How about yourself?
I'm good. I'm good. I can't complain. The weather today is beautiful outside. So, what's the weather like in LA?
Yesterday it was definitely good enough that I went for a nice little hike. There's a mountain nearby called Mount Wilson, which is sort of like my go-to. And it was nice because it was just like completely empty, and I was able to just kind of get lost in the nature. It was interesting because usually the trails are maintained, at least like good enough that trails intact and bushes and whatnot aren't overgrowing. But because they cut a lot of those services that do that, it was almost like going through Jumanji this time. Like all of the bushes and trees had started to like close in the trails. So
Yeah.
there was like a fair amount of me just like whacking trees out of the
Oh
way to
my
get through it.
gosh.
And it made me realize like if that can happen in 2 months, like I was like, God, what would it be like if just like humans were gone for like 2 years? Like what would Los Angeles look like if just all the trees and bushes could just grow infinitely?
Yeah.
It was just like a weird insight into like, oh, Jumanji could really happen. Like this is a real thing.
Yeah. I always like to start out. So what are we drinking today?
I've got myself just some mint tea. I am a big
Mint.
mint fan, so I am pretty happy with this choice.
That's awesome. So is that kind of like your go-to in the morning, or are you like a coffee person?
So I usually don't do coffee unless I'm on set and I genuinely need to like focus and the boost because
Yeah.
it does weird things to my brain and my body. So I usually just stick with tea, and
Yeah.
mint is just the best flavor. So
Tell me a little bit about yourself. I'd love to hear kind of your journey. So you graduated high school. So high school, Kevin, how did you get to Point Park? How did you find it? Because it's a pretty far trek from where you're from.
well, in high school, I had definitely known that film was what I wanted to pursue and what I wanted to learn, and I had been interested in it for long enough that I knew I was doing a lot of experimenting on my own. Like I was playing with different editing softwares, different cameras. And I quickly learned that it was a lot of self teaching and a lot of trial by error and experimentation. So I was able to understand that the best school was going to be the one that was hands on the soonest. I knew theory was important, and it very much is. But I knew that I'm a very hands on kind of person, and I wanted that type of education. So I started looking into schools online. I was just literally Google searching, and I was like, okay, I want to find a school that has this type of curriculum, but also I want to see the student work because I feel like that will speak for itself. And I just stumbled upon the Point Park Student Works, and everything that I was seeing was really impressive to me. And there was just something about the student work that I saw coming out of Point Park that just blew my mind. One of the student works was an alumni named Mark Christian. And so I ended up reaching out to him, and I was like, I would love to hear more about the school and your experiences. And he was very supportive, and he very quickly took me under his wing. And not only was he a mentor to me, but he also like gave me all the information that I needed, and I ended up choosing Point Park because of that.
That's awesome. So that's such a good story, and what a great idea to kind of connect with an alumni of someone that you really like their work, and that was so awesome of him to be so receptive to helping you. I've found that is pretty typical with a lot of Point Park alumni. They're really always, in most situations, willing to help, in any way that they can. If it's even as something as what seems like small, but talking to a student can really have such an enormous impact on that student's life and making the decision to come to Point Park from wherever they're from. So that's really awesome.
It was huge. It was really, really huge because it bridged that gap between like, okay, this is like this school far out away and I don't know anyone or anything about it. And it suddenly became very personable. And I was like, I actually could see myself being there.
Yeah, yeah. So do you two still keep in touch today?
Oh yeah, yeah. We keep in touch and we still work together to this day. We're both out here in Los Angeles and
Yeah.
both working away. I mean, when we can. But
Yeah, yeah, of
yeah,
course. Yeah.
yeah,
We'll get to that later,
yeah,
but
yeah.
that's really awesome. So you get to Point Park, you get to Pittsburgh. So what was your experience like? What did you think of Pittsburgh when you got there? What did you think of Point Park and kind of your, initial few classes and years there?
It was culture shock to me because it was from Texas to Pittsburgh. it was a pretty big change in a lot of ways that I really loved. And I had known I just wanted a change of scenery, a change of pace. Pittsburgh had so much beauty to offer, just from a like architectural, industrial standpoint.
Mhm.
I thought it was a gorgeous city. And I had the chance to visit it once before that, so I had already kind of known. I was like, this, I can very much visualize myself living here.
Yeah.
Even just like from the perspective of like Texas is very flat,
Yeah.
extremely flat anywhere you go in Texas. And Pittsburgh is like rolling hills, mountains. Uh, Literally everything was different. The weather was different. The people are different. And it was exciting to me to just like jump into a completely new lifestyle. I had known I was going into a small school, but I don't think I realized how small it was until I'd gotten there. And I kind of had this like, at least until like halfway through the school, I was like I know Point Park is small, but is it that small? And as I had gone and visited other universities or met other people that went to a more traditional like state school, I was like, wow, Point Park is very, very, very small. But I thought it was cool. Like I actually felt like I was able to become more family there, and the connections I felt were a lot stronger because there was more sense of unity. And I enjoyed that experience.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. So, would you change anything about your experience? Kind of looking back, would you change? Do you wish you were more involved in something? Do you wish that there was maybe a class that you would have taken that you didn't, or opportunity that you might have pursued?
I don't think so.
That's
No.
awesome. That's good. I was gonna say, hindsight's a tough one, but that's pretty awesome to look back and not really want to change anything. Do
Yeah.
you feel there was like one class or one professor or one student that was along with you that had the greatest impact on your time? Was there like one moment where you were like, I made such a good choice coming here?
It was definitely my professor, Christopher Sapisi. He is very inspiring, and his classes were invaluable. I think that I had him as a professor for every single year and every semester I was there.
Wow.
He's just one of those professors where he inspires you to learn so much more and to do so much more. And a lot of the professors there are phenomenal. But Chris Apizzi was hands down like one of the driving forces that inspired me every single day. He was excellent.
That's awesome. So you talked a little bit about when you were researching schools, and you were looking at all of the student work. So whenever you were a student at Point Park, is there a project that kind of stuck out in your mind as like one of your favorite projects that you worked on? Maybe something that was advertised online that another student could have potentially found. Your work to say like to kind of go down the same path that you did.
I ended up doing a thesis project for my final year, and I would say that definitely would stick out as being my favorite that I got to do here.
Yeah.
I like the way that they structure the thesis program, and it is pretty traditional as far as film schools go, where you by the fourth year you've picked how you want to concentrate. And I was concentrating in cinematography, and my fellow students had directing roles, producing roles, writing roles. And by the fourth year, I was able to form so many connections with people that I knew how to work with all these people. And I had the opportunity to make, I think it was 3 thesis projects, which was really fun and exciting. And but one of them in particular stood out to me as like the one that I felt the most passionate about. And I will never forget the experience working on it, because like when you're a student, you're kind of like go big or go home, and you're all in, and it's like everything you do for that semester is like live, breathe that project.
Yeah.
And I do think that Point Park had used it as like material to help like with outreach and be like, hey, look what our students are making. And I'm very happy that they can use that as that tool. But it was a very fun project. The project was called Milkman, and it was literally
Okay.
about what it sounds like. And yeah, it was
That's
just
so
fun.
cool.
It was just a blast. Like I think God, maybe we spent several months. I don't remember exactly how many months on it, but definitely one of those experiences where it's invaluable, and something they teach you, which did not. I didn't understand the extent of this, but they teach you that when you're working on your thesis project, it is very rare to have the labor and the tools that they give you when you're making it, like in the real world.
Okay.
Because like we had maybe like 15 people on set and we had access to cameras, lights, lenses, all the necessary equipment. And of course, they're like, in the real world, this is very expensive, which I knew. But
Mhm.
having been out here in LA now and I'm genuinely experiencing a wide range of sets, it
Mhm.
is extraordinarily expensive and rare to have the crew the size we did and the tools that we had access to. It is
Wow.
like, I would say the thesis project that we worked on, every single shooting day would probably have cost the equivalent of like, I want to say $10,000 to $15,000 a day in LA. And of course, we're students and we're doing it on a shoestring budget, and no one is charging for labor. But
Right.
yeah, once you move into the real world, like time is money. Like you literally, when you start trying to figure out how you're going to plan your day on a film set out here, you're like, well, we have 45 minutes to do this shot, but like if we can scrap this shot, we can save like $400. And it's like, it's so nice in school to not have to worry about that aspect. Like you have the freedom to make mistakes and like
Yeah.
figure it out. And that like it is, yeah, it being on a set of that size is very, yeah, it escalates fast in LA when it comes to cost.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. And what a great opportunity for students to be able to, like you said, learn on that equipment and kind of, gain some appreciation, true appreciation for, what you're working with. And, kind of like now that you're in the real world and, you're using this equipment and everything has a dollar sign attached to it, looking back and basically saying what you're saying, like, what a great opportunity to have all of that available, as a student to learn from.
Oh yeah, it's invaluable.
One thing that I kind of wanted to share, I'm not sure that this was a thing whenever you were a student there, but I think just this past fall, they did a freshman film challenge. So the cinema department put together this challenge, and it was for incoming freshman students. So I think in when we had talked before, we kind of mentioning getting your hands on equipment, right from the beginning, kind of have that opportunity to just dive right in. And this past fall, they put together this freshman film challenge. It was really cool. It was within the first couple of weeks of the school year, and there were teams of students that were put together, and they think they had 48 or 72 hours to write, produce, do the whole thing in that time period. And it was one, so that they're getting them really excited about being in school and being in this major, but then also too, it was a good to bring the community together, to help students meet others that are in the major with them from all different parts of the country and world. And it was really neat to see. They had mentors. Some of the upperclassmen were mentors to those incoming students, and then there were alumni involved too. So it was really awesome. There was alumni from all across the country who judged these films. They had a little preview showing of the whole thing with popcorn, and they had awards, and it was moderated by an alumni. It was just such a neat thing for these students, and I was so happy to see them really just embrace the whole entire experience. I saw the students, in and around campus that weekend, and, filming there. And I think it was maybe a 5 minutes, it was less than 10 minutes, but I think it was a 5 minute video that they had to do. But it was so exciting. And I'm so glad that our alumni like you, were able to be involved in that process, because, it's something new, but it's also really exciting too. So,
Yeah, it's totally the right move to get involved with that when you first jump in. Like you said, you start to forge the connections that will stay with you through all of school, and it's a safe place to make mistakes. And like I was always really hard on myself when I did make mistakes, and I do wish that I could like go back and be like, it's okay, like that's part of the process, and it's kind of the exciting part of the process too, because actually that's how you experience growth, and like that's how you understand like, okay, I've actually come farther than I thought. And I think when I was a freshman, they had like a little 48-hour film fest, but I don't think it was
okay.
structured to the extent that that it was more recently. And that's really exciting to hear that they're putting more of their attention on that because it's cool. It's really fun to do that.
Yeah, yeah, it's awesome. So whenever you were in Pittsburgh, what was Pittsburgh like? You said you liked it. You thought it was a pretty city. So did you hang out in any parts of Pittsburgh? What did you think about it? Because even in just the past couple of years, Pittsburgh has changed pretty drastically. So I'm just curious what you thought of it as a student.
Well, I certainly thought it was very different because it was just such a change of scene from me in Texas.
Right.
I definitely remember just the layout of it being very unique to me. And still, now that I've, I guess, traveled more of the states, like it really is a pretty unique city. All the bridges, all of the rivers. It's just, it's such an easy city to be like, if you saw a photo of Pittsburgh, you would know instantly. But with some other large metropolis cities, like you could look at it and be like, that might be Seattle or that might be like
Yeah.
Chicago. But like with Pittsburgh, it's pretty unmistakable. It's a very unique city. Very beautiful. Like during the summertime is like I can't think of a better place to be. It's literally perfect. Of course, the winters can be brutal, but
Yeah.
I don't know. It's incredibly unique. It's very fascinating.
Yeah, I love it so much. The campus, Point Park's campus itself has changed so much, and Pittsburgh itself, people stay in the city past 5, which is amazing. That didn't happen when I was a student there. So there's things to do. There's really awesome restaurants and places to visit. So have you been back to Pittsburgh at all since you graduated?
I was I have been once to work on another project. That was about I want to say maybe a year and a half ago.
Okay.
But I didn't get to visit Point Park. I was just in Pittsburgh for like a day, and then we sort of rounded up a lot of Point Park students, and then we brought them all to a shooting location that was, I think it was like an hour or two outside of Pittsburgh.
That's so
Yeah,
cool.
we were doing like a little passion project, and we ended up recruiting a lot of students to help out on it.
That's awesome. I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. Well, tell me a little bit back to your time at Point Park. So while you were there, did you have any jobs or internships that you had that kind of helped you navigate into what would be your career?
The standout one would be when I was a student there, they were doing the documentary called The Chair.
Okay.
And they were grabbing this documentary series was able to bring on a ton of intern students to help on these productions. So it was a documentary about filmmaking, and the premise was if you give two directors the same script, how different the movies are going to be. So there
Okay.
was two productions, like two actual film productions happening in Pittsburgh at the same time, and then the documentary was another production technically happening that was documenting both productions that were happening.
Wow.
So there were intern students for the narrative films, and there were also intern students for the documentary. And all of them had wildly different experiences, which was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Um, but I was in a very lucky position in that I was like, yeah, I want to help out, throw me in. I think at the time, Point Park was just like, if you're interested, let us know, and we'll just throw you in the first available spot that's open.
Yeah.
And somehow, luck, I'm assuming it was total luck. I ended up landing an internship that was to make, this is going to sound ridiculous, it was to make behind the scenes videos of the documentary that was documenting the narrative film productions. Um,
Wow.
and the reason they wanted the behind the scenes was to catalog everything that was happening, and also because they were going to be using our material as marketing and fundraising materials.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we were in this bizarre position where we're filming someone who's filming someone who's filming something. And
Wow.
um, because of this, we got to work directly under the executive producer of the entire show. His name is Chris Moore. And he has an incredible body of work. And he is a quite well known producer in Hollywood. And so we got firsthand, literally, we're like having lunch with him, talking, and we had this like no barrier ability to just be like, tell us everything. We're like sponges. We like want to know all about the world of Hollywood. And I think we did that for like a good 6 to 8 weeks. And um, because of that, and honestly, like this is, I really feel like this is luck, but we ended up landing a full-time job with Chris Moore again once I moved to Los Angeles, and he hired us to make a documentary for him out here in LA. And it was completely unforgettable experience. And we traveled all over the US for this documentary. And that was literally a clear, like, internship leads to job, which leads to life experiences.
Yeah.
And I just think it's like being ready to like jump at opportunity and being in the right place at the right time, because you're just open to the idea of like, let's just see where this takes me. And yeah, and that was like one of like a very big chapter in my life so far in Los Angeles.
Yeah. Even though it sounded a little crazy, like I'm going to film someone who's filming someone who's filming someone,
Yeah.
you're like, what am I doing? But, it's like you said, being open-minded and just kind of seizing the opportunity. I mean, there's
Yeah.
something to be said for that. You can never learn too much. So, and you never know where it's going to take you or who you're going to meet. So, how did you get from Pittsburgh to LA? What did that journey look like?
Point Park, and I don't know if they're still doing this, but they used to have a program where they would take students to Los Angeles and give them like a tour, but like a really good insider tour. They would like leverage a lot of the contacts or networks that they have formed through the professors there.
Mm-hmm.
And they would take you there for like a week. And it was like kind of like if I'm remembering this correctly, I think it was like all expense paid. They just like brought a group of maybe 8 or 9 students. And it was really exciting. Like we were literally staying in a hotel in Hollywood. They had an entire agenda set out for us. So we would hit like all the necessary restaurants, and we would go talk to agents, and we would talk to production companies, post houses. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
and that was awesome because it was a way to kind of break down barriers and be like, okay, this is a place. And everyone that I was talking to there was so friendly and like actually working. And while we were there, we also would do a get together with other Point Parkers living in there, and just get to, I guess, just kind of start the networking process. And that was a really cool, very good idea that they do for the students. And that made me a lot more comfortable to make the jump.
Yeah.
I think all it took for me after that point, because I was convinced after that trip, I was like, I will move here for sure.
Yeah.
I think I just like went home for the summer to raise some money for myself,
Yeah.
and then I ended up moving out there for a full time job that another student helped me get. And
Awesome.
yeah, and because of that, like because my first job in LA was through a Point Park connection,
Uh-huh.
um, I can trace every job that I've had out here to that person that got my foot in the door. So I really can say like it is all about the people that you end up meeting along the way through school that have a really serious effect on your outcome professionally. So yeah, I can trace every dollar I've made to back to Point Park.
That's amazing. In a normal day to day, what does your day kind of look like?
It definitely varies a lot
Yeah.
because of the nature of freelance.
Yeah.
I in the recent year or two, I've sort of hyper focused on either camera work or specifically being a cinematographer on projects. A lot of camera operating and a lot of figuring out how you're going to best approach a project, how you're going to capture a project, how you're going to light it. A lot of planning goes into things. Right before COVID hit, I was working on a short film narrative project, which was it was a comedy sketch for a YouTube channel, and we spent like probably a week and a half choreographing it. It was a big fight scene,
Okay.
so almost every single day we would meet at a gym in which we would previs the entire short film with just our cell phones. We would film like, let's capture it from over here, let's capture it from over here, and then
Yeah.
we actually edited the entire short film using footage from our phones. So that way,
Wow.
when we were actually shooting and filming the project, which we had one day because the location was so expensive, we had one day to film in the real location, and we had something along like 65 shots to get, which is kind of unheard of, but because we had planned for so long beforehand, we were able to get all 65 shots in a single day,
Oh, that's
and
amazing.
we executed the whole thing really well, and it was a very fun project. But yeah, I would say like my normal day to day revolves around a lot of planning and figuring things out and problem solving.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. I love it. Thinking back, you probably can't choose like one favorite, but do you have like a top five, like most memorable project that you've worked on?
One that stands out to me, I would consider the most difficult project I've ever worked on, but I'm very proud of it. There's a YouTube comedy duo known as Rhett and Link, and they've been
Okay.
around. They almost, I could say they're an integral part of YouTube history. They almost started YouTube. Like they were back in like the early days, like '08, '09 era of YouTube, and they were huge, and they were like some of the first to make really creative content online. And they're
Oh,
still very prevalent today. They have a huge production company out here in Los
cool.
Angeles. But they reached out to myself and my good friend Matt Miller, who is also a graduate of Point Park, and
Okay.
they asked us to be the technical directors of a live show that they were doing. And this was going to be like their big flagship show that they were going to film, and they were going to put it on Blu-ray and do wide release, and they were also going to be streaming it live to like a pay-per-view platform.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they were like, "Can you guys do this? Can you handle it technically? Can you be our technical directors?" And part of the role of a technical director is you're doing the live switching for different cameras during a live event.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very on the spot, very focused, very high stress type of work scenario. And when they asked us to do this, my first thought was, why did they ask me to do this? Because, and I hope they never see this, I literally had zero experience ever doing that. I still to this day don't know why they asked me to do that. But it was a huge job, and I really don't know why they were deciding to risk it on someone that did not have a portfolio doing that.
Yeah.
But I have this weird addiction to challenging myself as much as possible,
I love it.
and I was like, I'm gonna take on this challenge and figure this out. And me and Matt literally spent it must have been maybe 2 months preparing for this. Like I ended up buying all of the equipment necessary to make this happen,
Wow.
which I ended up just selling it back afterwards.
Yeah. Good
But
idea.
no one knew the difference. I literally showed up with an entire kit, like a whole production kit for this job. And I taught myself everything that I needed to know about how to technical direct. And I got thrown into the fire. And we're talking like this was a live show with 8 or 9 cameras. There was an audience of thousands. There must have been 1,000, 2,000 people there,
Oh, wow.
and it was one of those like one
Yeah.
shot, one opportunity,
Yeah.
and we pulled it off. And at the end of the night, the director of the show came up to Matt and I, and he said, "You guys were some of the best technical directors I've ever worked with. Congratulations!" Shook our hands, and since then he asked us to work on more shows with him. But I was like, I'm good. Like one was it was a completely different line of work, so different than
Yeah.
cinematography. It was very technical, very high stress, very
Yeah.
exciting. I don't think it's for me like long term, but we did
Yeah.
it, and kind of like I was like, okay, cool, did it. Proud of
Check it
myself
off my
for
list.
yeah, like we took on the challenge. But I guess I just like to remind myself that like it's good to continue to challenge yourself and learn more things. And it also
Yeah.
gives me an appreciation for when I watch live shows now, I know the extent of things that are happening behind the scenes, and it's very difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe it. Especially now when you mention that, it makes me think of some of the live shows that are, wrapping up their season now, like American Idol and Survivor. We just watched, a lot of these shows that have these live finales that are not happening now.
Yeah.
And I know my parents watch American Idol and just kind of watching the different setup in everyone's home. And, they had like 4 different phones set up so that there's all the different angles and, the lighting, making sure that, that was, consistent across everybody. But just to kind of see a teeny, teeny little sneak peek into, kind of what that world looks like, because when you're watching, we're just watching it, a person like me, I don't really think so much about all that other stuff. I know that it exists. I know that somebody has spent months, putting it together, but it's been a little interesting, during this time to watch how these live shows are kind of wrapping them up. Jeff Probst was in his garage, and the final contestants were on a computer screen. So while it's an unfortunate situation that we're all in, it's kind of an interesting time too, because you're really having to push your creative problem solving skills to try to wrap up a season of American Idol that you weren't intending on wrapping it up like this. But okay, how do we make it work in the best way that we can? So
Yeah.
it's been really interesting.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just a big metaphor for that. A lot of the industry is just problem solving,
Yeah.
always problem solving, and you have to. That is a skill that you have to not only be good at and patient with, but you have to work on it, and always be comfortable with things changing on the turn of a
At a
dime.
moment's notice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's awesome. So, kind of how we got connected was I saw something on Facebook about some face shields that you and a team of some of your friends and coworkers maybe were creating to send to essential workers.
yeah.
So, can you kind of tell me how you got started with this whole endeavor?
So when all this started to break out, I had sort of in the back of my head thought, I have a feeling that 3D printing has a place here, and I think that it can be helpful, but I wasn't sure how, because I don't have any medical background, and so I was sort of like laying low on a lot of 3D printing threads or chat rooms that I'm a part of, and a lot of people had similar questions. People were like, is there anything I can do right now? And then something changed one week, and it was, I want to say, January, somewhere near February, somewhere in February, two very large, well, I should say, two people suddenly were like, we have ideas. Here's what we think we can do. One of which was a 3D printing manufacturing company in Prague. They created face shields for printing, and they said, we can make these designs available online for free. Everyone can start printing these right now. They were working directly with the Ministry of Health in their country. And so they were getting the seal of approval. And it was an overnight transformation. They turned their facility into a face shield 3D printing manufacturing plant.
Wow.
So they sort of spearheaded the large industrial version of that, and that design is still extremely popular and is being printed right now today for lots of healthcare workers. Um, there was also an individual, part of a much smaller company, maybe a team of only a few people,
Mhm.
who open sourced their own design, which was a lot simpler and faster to print. It wasn't quite as sturdy, but it allowed you to print more of them much faster.
Okay.
And he also put his plans available online for free and was like, if anyone wants to just start printing these, here we go.
Yeah.
And it was a literally like in 48 hours, uh, so many people that were part of the 3D printing community just started burning these out, like printing them nonstop, making them, and then sending them to healthcare workers. And it's pretty much the spirit of open source, where it's like the world has a problem right now. How can we solve it?
Yeah.
And we did not need large companies to be like, okay, well, let's run clinical trials. Let's test it out for these defects. Let's put it under stress
Yeah.
tests in these environments. It was like, this is a problem, solve it immediately.
Yeah.
And it was like hundreds and hundreds of people were just activated overnight, and we're like, we're doing this now.
Yeah.
And so it was sort of easy for like-minded people in Los Angeles to get together that we were all doing this anyways, and it became a lot easier when we connected and just formed a small group. I think in the beginning it was 5 of us, and we just had a text thread on our phones, and we're like, I'm going to make 20 of these today, and then someone would be like, oh, I'll come pick them up, and I can deliver them to the nearest hospital. And every single day that went by, there was tremendous growth. Like we would have new people be interested in reaching out. We started to have people that had no 3D printing experience even reaching out saying like, use us. Like we can't print, but we can be expendable to you however you need it. So those people became our runners, people that would pick up the prints from us and deliver them to hospitals. And then we had people with web design jump on board, and they created a back-end web portal for us to create an actual technical infrastructure that helped us log how many prints we were making, how many prints have gone out to certain hospitals. It tracked our progress. It became like a dream team. And over the course of 1 month, it went from the 5 of us in a text thread to over 100 people
Oh my gosh.
using if you've ever heard of it, it's Discord, which is like basically it's like Slack, but
Oh,
um,
okay. Got
with
it.
slightly different features.
Yeah.
So we now
Yeah.
have our own like Slack environment. We have our own
Oh,
website. We have our own backend portal, and it's amazing how fast that formed and how effective it had been. I think that in the span of us doing this, I can actually check the number real quick. I want to tell you how many we've printed.
yeah.
Uh,
Because you knew that was going to be my next question.
yeah, it looks like, okay, we're at 17,970 face shields delivered,
Wow.
which I think is a really impressive number for 3D printing. For
Yeah.
people who are not knowledgeable in 3D printing, it is
Right.
a very slow manufacturing process. It is not meant to be fast
Yeah.
when you're printing in large numbers. So that
Right.
sheer number is kind of a feat when it comes to 3D printing. If say for instance if a large company like Apple or Boeing they have
Mhm.
access to machines that could probably produce that number in a day, but the point is
Yeah.
they aren't, and we still have large hospitals reaching out to us asking for these shields,
Right.
and we've been able to help fill that gap while the supply chain catches up, and I'm very happy that we were able to do that.
Yeah. That's amazing. Congratulations. And thank you for, really taking this up, seizing this opportunity and helping so many people. So I guess probably in the beginning, a lot of these shields were pretty local to the LA area. Have you shipped to other states or other cities further away?
Yeah, as COVID started to get worse and scarier, we realized that we needed to stop doing hand deliveries. So we
Yeah,
moved to exclusively mailing everything. Even if the hospital was a mile away, we were still mailing.
got it.
So that basically opened the door for being like, well, if we're gonna mail it anyways, we can just we can take order requests from literally anyone in the U.S.
Yeah.
So we've sent lots to New York. We've
Oh,
sent to many, many states.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, we have.
That's awesome. So are you still getting requests? I know that we're all still, in the middle of this pandemic. It's not over yet, and it probably won't be over completely for the foreseeable future. So are you still getting daily requests for these shields? And if so, kind of what is an average number of what you're getting?
So this is sort of that back end portal that I was talking about that a really, really talented person put together for us.
Yeah.
And it sort of helps answer the question like how many requests are we still getting, and we actually have a chart right on the main page that shows us how many requests we're getting every single day, and then it
Okay.
also shows us how much we're able to keep up. So
Okay.
as you see, like green for printed shows us how many we're making every day, how
Hmm.
many are ordered, and there is right now we've noticed a nice steady decline,
Hmm.
which I believe means that the supply chain is catching up, which I really hope is what that means.
Right.
Yeah, I would say over the last 2 weeks, we've seen a pretty huge decline in requests.
Yeah.
It shows us how many people are with us. So we have 102 people printing. We have 4
Wow.
dedicated runners that do pickups.
Yeah.
Um, it shows me how many prints I've made personally. So my count is currently at 1,696.
Wow.
So we've got a lot of information that we're playing with here. We
Yeah.
also have a GoFundMe that's been attached to this, so we always know like where we're at resources wise.
Right.
There's like a little page when I actually have printed some of these, I'll
Oh,
actually type them in here, like, oh, I made 15, and then when I hit create new package, it tells our runners that I now have shields ready for pickup. But I'm not going to
okay.
do that because I actually don't.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that's sort of what
Awesome.
we've been working off of, and I am wildly impressed by the person who made this. His name is I don't want to mess his name up, so maybe I'll have to what hold on. It's a Michael Tierson, I believe is his name that made this. And
Okay.
it's
Okay.
excellent, excellent, excellent work on his end.
Wow.
Okay, let's see if I can bring us back to
Yay! Look at that. We're
I'm a
back.
wizard. Yeah, so that's our system.
Wow.
We're still
I
getting
love it.
requests, but it has slowed down a lot, hopefully for good
Yeah.
reasons.
Yeah, yeah, of course. And we're not charging for these, right? So they're
Yeah.
requesting them and you're just mailing them out. That's amazing.
Yeah, there is
That's
$0 to any medical workers in need. We've actually had a lot of companies even reach out to us wanting to buy them, but we've had to turn them down because we don't have the means to create that many. So yeah, it's
right.
all been completely nonprofit.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. What made you buy 3D printer? Did you kind of just want to tinker around or did it have a initial purpose?
I just wanted to get into a new hobby, and it felt like a fun space that I wanted to experiment with.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just started as curiosity, and I finally pulled the trigger. For it was a birthday present to myself a couple years ago, and
Yeah.
I fell into it really fast. I love the ability to just be like, I'm gonna imagine this thing, and then you can just like materialize it in front of you, and that's just it's a really cool feeling. And yeah, and I also realized at the time not only could it be a hobby, but also it could be I find a lot of times I'll be on a job and I'll think to myself, I really wish I had a thing that would attach this to this thing, or I wish
Yeah.
I had a device that I could like lock this thing over to the like there's always a need for a device that doesn't exist in film
Yeah.
because there's so much equipment and so many different types of camera builds or different types of situations you'll find you're in where you're like, I wish I had a bracket for this thing. I wish I had an
Yeah.
adapter for this. And so I was like, 3D printing is the answer to that.
Absolutely.
And I was like, I want to start trying to use this for my profession. And it was exactly that. I was able to directly start to use it for my job. And I've found that even other people will reach out to me and they'll be like, I really need this thing. Can you make it for me? Yeah, we've made all sorts of different camera equipments and adapters and pieces and whatnots. And also, it's just incredibly handy to like, if you break something that would cost hundreds of dollars to repair it, that you know you could actually just repair it with using a printer, you can just mock it up in 3D and then repair it yourself. Like my printer, I think the cost of the printer that I have now is somewhere between $700 and $800. And I was in a car wash one day, and it was I should have gone to a nicer car wash, but it had one of those machines that like the noodles would like hit your car like
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I guess I picked the wrong noodle at the wrong time, and the noodle whacked off my side view mirror, and the housing for the mirror it completely snapped. There's tabs on the inside of the mirror that causes it to lock into place, and
Okay.
they
Okay.
all shattered. And I'm like, crap. I mean, I was like, well, it's plastic. I'm sure this isn't expensive. So I went
Right.
to Volkswagen and I asked how much the replacement piece was going to cost, and they quoted me $700. And I was like, I can fix this myself.
Yeah.
And I designed, mocked up, and then 3D printed the tabs that shattered. And I used a just like a plastic adhesive, just like it's like a goop, an
Yeah.
industrial level goop that allows you to just like weld plastic to other plastic. And I attached the pieces, snapped it right back onto my car, and literally that alone, like my printer paid for itself.
Yeah, exactly. I was just gonna say it was the same price as just
Yeah,
buying a printer. That's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
See, I'm gonna have to snippet this out and show it to my dad. That might sell him right there. He's a car guy. So if I relate this back to cars, I feel like I might be able to have a winner here. But
Yep.
that's awesome. That's awesome. I love it. Any advice that you would share, things that they can do to maybe help set themselves up, especially in this time? I know I've talked to a lot of alumni. Some of them are doing some professional development webinars and listening to different podcasts and things like that, just to keep themselves learning. So, do you have any advice or anything that you could share that might help a student or recent graduate, alumni?
Yeah, yeah. I would say, in a broad, overarching way that is not related to COVID, to circle back a little bit, not being afraid to make mistakes
Mhm.
is probably, I would say, one of the most valuable pieces of advice that I think I could give. Love the process of learning to make mistakes because it's so important for growth. And really, like, I would just beat myself up in school over making mistakes, and I really wish that I had been like, this is good. Like, this is an exciting thing,
Yeah.
to be like, I'm not going to make that mistake again, and I'm going to improve from this. Sometimes you forget to reflect and be like, why did I make that mistake, and how can I fix it? You get so caught up in being upset at yourself that you forget to actually learn from the experience. And um, if I could go back in time and tell that to my freshman self, I absolutely would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really good advice. That
Yeah.
I couldn't have said it better myself. That's really good advice. So, on a little bit of a more positive note, so how are you during this time keeping up with friends? Are you doing? I know a lot of people are doing virtual happy hours or like parking lot parties and things like that. So, how are you keeping in touch with any friends, your family?
Definitely just lots of phone calls, lots of texts
Yeah.
and Zooms. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, it's been very difficult. And Yeah, it makes you realize how humans are very socially connected, and once you remove that element, one of those pillars of just life in general, it things feel a little bit more unstable, and it has been a challenge to adapt to that and figure out what is this world kind of like, how do you live in this new world right now? And yeah, it hasn't been easy. I've had lots of days where I just don't talk to anyone and I'm just like mopey and miserable. And I'm still learning. I don't really know how to properly stay connected, but all I know is I'm just trying to talk to family more and talk to
Yeah.
friends more. And yeah, that's the best that I can do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have to ask, being in the cinema world, what are you watching anything good now? Did you start any new series? Are you rewatching anything? Any recommendations?
I don't know if this is a recommendation on a large scale to cinema people, but I just
Yeah.
rewatched Silicon Valley and I love it. It's a great show.
Okay.
I just love the shit out of Silicon Valley. It's just like a nice, like, easy to watch, fun show. I
Mhm.
I feel like my heart can't handle drama right now, so I've only been watching fun things.
Yeah, yeah, I
Um,
can agree with that.
so I'm sorry to anyone that is in the TV world that has made compelling drama. I can't do it right now.
Right, right.
But yeah, I did Silicon Valley, Community, those types of lighthearted, easy to watch
Yeah,
shows. That's sort of been on my itinerary.
yeah. I like that. I like. Well, this has been awesome, Kevin. Thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed talking with you, and thank you so much for sharing your 3D printer with us. Yeah, this has been awesome.
Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, Lauren.
Yeah, you're welcome. Bye.